And now it's working. All right. All right, the bracha for Torah study remains. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And we, I believe, have made our way to chapter 4. This is where it gets good, and I'm going to deny somebody the great pleasure that they would have. So I'm going to say right off, it's paradigmatic. The author knows that if Cain and Abel are the only two people in the world, that Cain getting a wife isn't necessarily consistent with the literal read of this story. I know, you know, the author knows. We'll get to that, but yes, version of the same thing. Yes. So after being kicked out of the garden and being given their leather clothes, it seems, and being locked out of the garden, kicked out to the east, and the garden is protected by the seraphim, the seraph, and the fiery, ever-turning sword. And we continue along. V'adam yada et Chava ishto v'tohar v'teled et Cain v'tomar kiniti ish et Adonai. The human had known Eve, his woman, chapter 4, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain, and said, "I've created a man with Hashem." Yud He Vav He. Now, even that. Just pausing on that. So after the last scene and all the horrible things rained down on Adam and Eve about what life outside the garden is going to be like, when the camera cuts to life outside the garden, pretty curiously, does it seem so bad? No. Like, they hook up, as Rashi says. She becomes pregnant and gives birth, and all of this stuff about, there'll be pain in childbirth. No, like it doesn't seem to be a particularly difficult delivery, as it were. Like they're fine. And obviously, by definition, there's a length of time going on here. Do we get like an Adam struggled each day to bring food out of the earth? No.
Or did Eve say to her husband, "I'll never do this again"?
I'll never do this again, right? Swearing the oath, right? Like well, we know not, because she does before long. They're at it again. The next verse. So you have that, like, sort of somewhat curiously, like it's not as bad as one might expect, or at least that's not the portrayal. If it is, it's going on off screen and not on screen. And again, famously here, we get yada, knowing in the biblical sense, is from here, right? So there are lots of different phrases in Hebrew, as in English, and I'm guessing any other language, for having sex, right? Like we have, like, talk about something that has a lot of euphemism. This is the peak. So same in Hebrew. Yada is used primarily for what one would call like legitimate relations. Meaning there's lots of times people in the Torah and the rest of the Bible have sex, and it's not, it's non-consensual or not legal or not legitimate or whatever it might be. Yada is generally used for legitimate relations, right? Or sometimes ironically in like intensely not legitimate settings, like where it seems to be used like somewhat sardonically. So again, usually with a positive connotation, yada, unless again it's sardonic. Right. I think King David knows his legitimate wives, but usually it's like ba'alav, like comes, like sometimes comes into, like is the phrase used for I mean, in English, like you say, like have sex, or you can have say making love, and you're not going to say making love in certain contexts, right? Like the drunken hookup isn't that unless you're using it ironically, right? The yeah, again, Harvey Weinstein or whatever like example you want to give. Like, so yeah, so David usually comes into it, and you'll find different phrases, and you can sort of like guess what's the author saying based on it. So yada, so when you say no, usually usually a sense of again legitimate relations, as it were. And that's what I get that mainly from Alter. And yet not knowing, like again, it's supposed to be intimate knowledge. Like there's a sense of caring for the other rather than coming into, which is a little more earthy, as it were. That different people translate different ways. No is the literal translation. So Adam knew Chava, his wife, and she conceived and she gave birth to Cain. And she said, Kaniti, again, in Hebrew, it's the same shorish, meaning acquired. He translates created, acquired, might be better. The Alter translated, I've got me a man with the Lord. The acquired, like kaniti in modern Hebrew is like I bought it. And the with, et could be with, or it could be like it could, I've created a man with the Lord, but you could say like I acquired a man or created a man like God. You could do it that way too. With the Lord is nice and pious. Like the Lord would be Chava being like, God created people before, and now guess who else can do it? And that, of course, is her name. Or she's named this because she's the mother of all the living. And it could be a little bit more assertive than pious. Either way, I've created a man with Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. This again now Yud-Heh Vav-Heh straight up, as opposed to chapter 1 just Elohim, chapter 2 Yud-Heh Vav-Heh Elohim as a construct form. Now, chapter 4, just Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. So this is like a different, or a somewhat different name of God being used. From here, and it'll be the primary one used on out, right? From chapter 4 to now, this is the primary name used for God. So that the first thing she conceives, gives birth. תוסף את חבל, והיא חבל רועה צאן, וקין היה עובר אדמה. So, Aved Adama, and she went on to give birth to the brother Abel, Hevel. And Abel was a shepherd of flocks, and Cain was a worker of the ground. So,
how many years was it? Was it right away? Were they twins?
It's just two, right? So I would say not twins. Like the impression is two, right? Because there's time between. There's like the Tosef seems to be, and additionally, she gave birth. So it could be twins, I guess, maybe, but yeah, like you get the sense of two. She went on to give birth to his brother. You get the sense of two separate pregnancies. At the very least, the firstborn gets a whole speech. I have created life with God. And the second one gets
Here he is.
up, here he is. Right, typical second child. Like this is like really, like it's right there. The first one is this big celebration. You get the feeling of life. And the second one is, oh yeah, and Abel, he gets a whole naming thing. Abel, what's the point of the name? We don't know. It's not given. Like, so note there is like this difference already that indicating there's going to be tension. Possibly. So Kain, Kaniti, I acquired with God. Hevel, we don't know. Most think that it's linked to famously in Ecclesiastes and Kohelet, Hevel Hevelim. But vanity, all is vanity is how King James translated. But really, it's a sense of vanity, not in the. It's like air. Ephemeral, something fleeting. So, which is what Ecclesiastes is saying, that life is ephemeral. And so here, Abel's life, spoiler alert, is going to be fleeting. And here and gone.
I thought she didn't have a third child.
Well, she will, but it'll be labeled
No,
later. Yeah. And Abel was a shepherd. By the way, in answer to the question everyone has about Cain's wife and things like that, Rashi will say that there's an unmentioned sister in each birth, that they're twins each time. Do they have like that? But so they're already like trying to figure out ways to solve the problem. Again, the story is probably paradigmatic rather than literal in that sense. And Abel was a shepherd of flocks, and Cain was a worker of the ground. A servant of the ground. What's the difference? Why is this significant? One's a shepherd, the other a farmer.
Well, if you go back to the original, God is the farmer has to work. Nothing is really mentioned about shepherd herding or even.
Yeah, kind of sort of in the family business. The family business, like God says, you're going to work the ground, and Cain's like, all right, I'm working the ground, and it's hard. And shepherding, by the way, yeah, relatively, which is more difficult, farming or shepherding? Farming by like a decent degree. So notice that they are in different lines of work, presumably significantly, and Cain's in the harder line of work. There's so he Cass does a like sort of drills down deep on that one. Farming requires intellectual sophistication and psychic discipline. Wit is necessary to foresee the possibility of bread from grain, to develop tools, to protect crops, self-control. Indeed, a massive change in the psychodynamics of need and satisfaction is needed before anyone will work today so they might eat months later, right? The whole point of farming is that you envision something almost that isn't obvious. This stalk of wheat is going to become bread. And it's going to happen way down the line. And I'm going to have to, clear the soil, plant, plow, hope for good weather, protect the land, both from animals and bugs and other people. Because you can't come and harvest my grain, that's mine. And I know that there's not going to be any real reward for this for some time. Again, months down the line. In addition, agriculture comes with new relations to the earth and also towards the heavens. Farmland and settled habitation, it represents a giant step towards human self-sufficiency, yet it is also precarious and very dependent on rain, which is part of the sentence that Adam is given, that you're going to be dependent on the heavens. So because he mixes his labor with the earth, the farmer claims possession not only of the crops, but also to the land itself. For the same reason, he's even inclined to regard himself as responsible creatively as maker for the produce itself. On this view, the farmer is an audacious, self-assertive character. The shepherd, in contrast, lives a simple and by and large artless life. His work is mild and gentle. His rule requires no violence, right? The sheep graze as they roam and produce wool and milk out of their own substance. The shepherd contributing nothing, but also harming nothing. Though he wanders the earth as he pleases, the shepherd has no illusions of self-sufficiency. Indeed, he is likely to feel acutely the dependence of his entire life on powers not under his control and processes not of his own creation. The settled farmer seeks to design his life. The wandering shepherd allows his life to be designed by the world. Right. The shepherd, right. The shepherd's right. So, but there's sort of like this intense difference of this image of the shepherd sort of like hanging around. And it's just less intensive work. You slaughter and you shear and you milk and all these other things that are going on. But that's sort of not as it's not as intense as farming, and it doesn't require like the same level of foresight. I can look at the sheep and be like, I see what that's going to be, as opposed to the seed. Yeah. Correct. Though it is, though it's not the same level of defense that you have to have, because a shepherd, of course, can wander off. You can run away. So yes, and you can run away, whereas the farmer is in last stand mode. It's stand your ground mode, like with a greater intensity than the shepherd has to be. The nomad can be a little bit more chilled out. So yes, and so Abel, a shepherd of flocks, and Cain, a worker of the ground. And it was at the end of some days, or Vahi Miketz Yamim, or at the end of days, something like that. And Cain brought an offering to Hashem from the fruit of the ground. And Abel brought as well from the firstborn of his flocks and their fat. Hashem paid attention to Abel and his offering, and did not pay attention to Cain and his offering. And Cain was very upset, and his face was fallen. And Hashem, Yodei Vavhe, said to Cain, why are you upset, and why is your face fallen? Is it not that if you do well, you'll be raised? And if you don't do well, then sin crouches at the threshold, at your door, and its desire will be for you, and you'll dominate it. All right. That, by the way, is the main plot of Steinbeck's East of Eden is based on that little speech there. All right, so what's going on with this whole bit? This again, it's enigmatic, but why do they bring God an offering? Note that did God ask for it? Yeah. Right, it's not in the text. Does God want it? Not in the text. Why do they bring God an offering? It isn't entirely clear.
Wouldn't it be just, somehow they're offering, it's a sacrifice. They're saying, oh God, we're doing this for you. You now take care of us.
Right. So is this right? So there's a few different possibilities going on. One is this sort of I give something to you, you then owe me. If I sacrifice to you, God, then you'll protect me, possibly. You could just keep it and eat it. It could be a muscle flexing. God, you said that we would struggle for every bit that we got out of the ground. And look, we're not. Like, not only have I, do I have enough for myself, but I've got some left over for you. Here you go. Envelope.
Leftovers for God.
Cain's offering is his offering. Abel's is the best of the best.
There are two things going on here. That's correct. Cain gives the fruit of the ground, and Abel gives the good stuff, the firstborn of the flock and their fat. Like, so he's given the good stuff. Though I might point out, notice the order.
Secondborns are like that.
Secondborns are like that. He's looking to please, but and not just that, but like and Abel also brought as well the Chevel Evi Gamhu. He's not just secondborn in that he's like more the pleaser. He's secondborn in that he's the imitator. Cain does it, comes up with the idea, it seems, and says, "Here, God, some for you too." And then Abel's like, me too, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to like one up you in it. So that could be what's going on, because you have the Gamhu, like also him. He also did it, like, and there is a sense of that there's a definite order to it. So not only is there an order, Cain does it first, but also it emphasizes that that it's better stuff, and also note I think there's a present rivalry, right, between the farmer and the herder, who have like sort of like different lifestyles, right? One is building civilization, like the farmer is building civilization, settled, planning, looking forward, the need for technology. And the shepherd is wandering, less settled, less need for technology, more.
They get in each other's way. Shepherds don't want fences.
Shepherds don't want fences.
Farmers want fences.
And farmers want fences. That is exactly right. And so these are two paradigms that are going to play out. And I would argue, like at some level, still playing out. Our society is largely divided, with exceptions, but like the large groupings are dense, settled places and less dense places, right? Like sort of like if I'm getting on. Colin says this well. If I'm getting on the subway and going to work each day, I don't know that the other people on the subway don't have automatic weapons that they're going to start shooting me with. And if I'm living in a rural area where the quick response team is not going to be here for 3 hours, maybe I want to have a weapon, right? Like, so like this sort of settled, not settled thing. And et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of other examples of this, but the settled, not settled thing is real, and it's present here in the text. That they sort of like are. I think that those paradigms are like not. It's not just a for instance that we're told that they have these professions. It's sort of like this rivalry that exists among humanity. Lynn.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's like there's a backstory that they're arguing, and it's almost like two kids going to their parents to have them decide, which is better. Is it my crops or
Right.
is it what?
Yes, is it my crops or is it this offering? And it is, and on some level, like if God, the sheep fat, this is worth more than the fruit of the ground. It's a more like it's a luxury good. And Cain is just like, he can't compete. If he's got bread, he can't compete. but we're not told, correct? We're just, and it's so weird because it's not that it was rejected. Note, like there's super careful wording there, right? It's not rejected. The Lord regarded the Lord regarded Abel and his offering, but he did not regard Cain and his offering, or paid attention to Abel and his offering, and did not pay attention to Cain and his offering. Right? It's al Cain al Tochoto lo she'aver echad lo Cain.
Says that God had no, for Cain, his gift, he had no
Regard. It's almost a sense of pay attention to. It's not all the way to reject. It's like one was accepted and the other was ignored. And it's not all the way to rejection. Yeah, it's just sort of like left on the table. And then you have this moment of consoling, it seems, right? And maybe.
And I read that role. The first time I read verse 6, and Hashem said to Cain, why are you annoyed? I read it as Abel said to Cain, why are you annoyed?
Right. But there's no, right. So here, it's a weird question for God to ask. Why are you upset and why is your face fallen? What, you don't know? Is this God like not knowing that God's behavior like triggered this?
He didn't turn his countenance toward him.
Right, like if you make a big deal out of one and not the other, what do you expect? Right. 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 She was always the favorite. Yeah. So it depends. And it plays out here in the sacrifice again, but like your point, like why are they doing it is like a good one. Like the one thing that's clear is that it's human and not divine. It's not, God will later command sacrifices, but it is initially a human thing. Either pride, I've got extra so I can afford to give to you, or again, submission, thank you for granting me this sort of thing. Like
what about gratitude?
That you can read it.
What about simple gratitude? They heard their parents talking about the Garden of Eden and that the miracle that took place, and the fact that they are now on their own, they're clothed, they have the tools to survive. How about Cain just say, out of gratitude, saying, I'm going to give an offering? And he's the one that thought of it first. He thought of it first.
Right. So it could be gratitude based on like the history. Though I will note, and Cass also knows the family history. We don't know of a lot, but we don't know if they know the family history. Parents are famous for not relaying embarrassing episodes from early in their life to their kids. So do Adam and Eve say, you know what, before you were born, dude, and life was great, right? We literally was paradise before you guys came along. Like, we don't know. So maybe. So this is the thing. It could be gratitude.
And he thought of it first.
Adam tells his two sons, we need someone to fill the field, we need someone to take care of the animals, because your mother.
Right. Right. Is Adam like, is he still blaming? Is he still in blame mode? Right. Yeah. And Cain, again, it's very clear that Cain thinks of it first and that Abel is following along. And then God does this thing that seems to be consoling, though does God know the answer? Like why are you upset? and why has your face fallen? By the way, naflu panecha, like it's a very specific thing. It's not anger. It's disappointment and sadness. Face fallen is jealousy has like a little as an energetic component to it that face fallen doesn't have. Like it prompts sympathy for Cain, right? He was rejected, or he feels rejected by God, whether or not he was rejected. He feels rejected, and his face has fallen to the point where God, like I almost have this sort of like arm around him image, right? Like why are you upset, and why is your face fallen? Is it not
losing
that
face? Losing face is embarrassing. It's
not
shameful.
Yeah,
He's embarrassed. He's ashamed that because
it could be, though. Again, it's not the phrase used isn't a losing face, but your face falling. So it could be a synonym, or it might be right again like that. If somebody's face falls, you like picture like again a sadness or a resignation, something like a sense of resignation.
Or he could have said, okay, that's it.
Right.
I'm done.
I
tried to do the right thing, and it's never enough for you. There's so many different ways. It's so loaded at the why is your face fallen? Is it not that if you do well, you'll be raised, and if you don't do well, then sin crouches at your door, and its desire will be for you, and you'll dominate. V'ata timshol bo.
Dominate who?
If you improve yourself, you will be forgiven. If you do not improve yourself, sin rests at the door. So,
And wait a minute, and what's the back? Keep going.
its desire is toward you, yet you can conquer it.
Yeah, its desire is toward you, yet you can conquer it. By the way, notice there's yet you can conquer it is one way, and you'll dominate it is how Friedman translates. Here, you can be its master, alter, but you will rule over it. That, by the way, that's the East of Eden question that the main character in Steinbeck's East of Eden asks and like drills down into the Hebrew. What does Timshal mean? Is Timshal yet you will rule over it per alter, or you can rule over it per JPS or Art School? Right. So is it that you will rule over your urge to sin, or that you can rule over your urge to sin? What's the difference? If I can, then it's up to
You to
me.
do me to do.
Free to
me, it's not consolation. It's like a stern father, like.
It's right. So if it's you, right. So if it's you can rule over it, then it is like as a stern father lecture. Look, you are in control of your fate. You can accomplish whatever you want, but it's up to you. If you have the will to conquer whatever is out there, it's up to you. Right.
To me, that could be almost a challenge.
Right. You will rule over it, or you will dominate it. Like you read different ways. The East of Eden read, like what he's wrestling with, is sort of a Calvinist read of it, where it's where like life is predetermined, right? Like like our lives are set. God is all powerful, and like what's going to happen is already known, as it were, and you will, as opposed to you can, in which case you're the independent agent. Do we have free choice or do we not? And do we have free choice or not is like in that novel, which is a good book, like is dependent on this one word. Does it mean you can rule over it, which means free choice, or you will rule over it, which means no free choice? So, and beautifully poetic. I think it's can, which is against Friedman and Alter. I like the you can rule over it read, which Rashi agrees with. The can like the this is God. It seems to be explaining human nature. If you do well, you'll be raised. And if you don't do well, that sin crouches at your door. Like this anthropomorphic issue of sin, like crouching at the door, and its urge is toward you. Like you're drawn to it. It's almost another version of the Apple story, right? Like sort of like this temptation. Its urge is toward you, and
Just waiting for you to make a misstep.
just waiting for you to make a misstep. And what happens from there? Up to you. You don't have to give in. It's at the door. You're either going to let it in or not.
You're in control.
You're in control.
It doesn't seem to me like what he did was so bad. That it warranted that type of.
Well, that's right. So right up to this point, not only has Cain not only is it not so bad, but he hasn't done anything wrong.
See that over here in Alan Zort's code says that what he was doing was giving them the inferior part of his crop.
Right.
Right, so that his brother was giving the cream of the crop.
The first one.
And Cain was,
Given leftovers.
yes.
But before Cain did anything, nobody gave anybody nothing.
Right. Yeah. So again, our school is translating like by Rashi. The traditional read is that because they need Ibn Ezra, they need a reason why is Abel's accepted and Cain's is not. Answer, the hint is we were told first fruits, and the implication of first fruits is shvach on the other side. We're told the Torah is being too polite to tell us that that Cain gives the shvach crop, but like the implication is there because we're told good here, so not so good over there.
Yeah.
And if God says, if you improve yourself, that means there's room for improvement, which means he didn't do as much as he could or should.
Right. Right. There's room there. Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Right. Right. If Rachel is the pretty sister, then by implication we know that Leah isn't. Yeah. So right. So that's the Abel gives the good sacrifice. By implication, we get the rest. So but notice how they sort of have to create a sin for it to be there. But which is this long Jewish tradition, Christian as well, of justifying God. Like, because otherwise, like, it doesn't make any sense. Those are the midrashic openings, right? It doesn't tell you, but it begs an explanation. So, like, you sort of like have to insert one.
Well, isn't the issue survivability? So if you have a newborn sheep, you still have other sheep that you can live with. But when it comes to the first fruits, you need to be able to survive. So you might you still need food to survive, and you need the better fruits to do that.
Right, that first fruits are specifically first fruits of your first crop are like specifically difficult to offer. You're saying, yeah, right. And again,
It might be easier to give a new.
Right. If I've got another one, yeah. So Cain could be arguing all of this, or I picture like this scene, him like stewing, thinking it all in his head. Jerk. Don't you know how hard it is to do this? Abel sits around all day under a tree. I'm working the ground.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
Rabbi, I think this reminds me of the analogy with with God as a parent. And God is just a bad parent here, favoring one child over the other.
And then giving, right, so that could be the case, and if so, won't be the last instance of that. And then giving this correct but infuriating talk. um if you only did better. Yeah, but powerful. I like it's, and this is again, like it's done in verse and is and I think is a particularly lovely speech. The Alter goes into a whole detailed thing on the like poetic structure of it, but the point being there's a poetic structure to it. But first the how many syllables and blah blah blah. Why are you incensed, and why is your face fallen? For whether you offer well or whether you do not. At the tent flap, sin crouches, and for you is its longing, but you will rule over it. It's so powerful. And then by the Masoretic text, story goes on. And Cain said to his brother Abel, and it was while they were in the field, and Cain rose against Abel his brother and killed him. This is the ultimate midrashic opening in the entire Torah. And Cain said to his brother Abel, comma, quote, there's nothing there. Like every other instance in the Torah of and so said to so-and-so, comma, quote, blah, 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 period, end quote. Here, whatever he said isn't there. He says something, but we're not told what, which is the weirdest thing. So that's the way it is in the Hebrew Bible. In the Septuagint, and in Qumran, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, there is a sentence there. But in the like formal official Masoretic text in Hebrew Bible, there's nothing there. So was there something there and it dropped out? Or was there nothing there and it got filled in these translations to make it, I mean, if you fill it in, it reads more smoothly. But we're not told what. So that's a midrashic opening. You can, what did he say to Abel? Whatever you want him to have said, whatever you think is going on in the story.
Rabbi?
Right. Is it no, right. Or I mean it's Cain saying it to him, right? So is it you jerk, I'm gonna kill you? Or is it how dare you usurp my position? Is it you embarrass me in front of everyone? Is it you freeloader? Is it hey Abel, let's go out in the field. I want to show you something. Come, let us go out into the field. So JPS fills it in. That's what's in.
It's in comments, it says, the ancient version.
Right. Yeah. So the Septuagint and Qumran has come, let's go out into the field. The formal Masoretic text doesn't have it. Come, let us go into the field. Cain said to Abel, come, let's go into the field. And then Cain. Right. Correct. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The Septuagint famously all translated miraculously at once. So like that. So it is so you know, if you again, like you can argue like which is the authentic, it's not quite clear. In this case, either one argues for itself, right? It usually I think that the best principle is whichever reading makes less sense is probably the original. because a translator would want to clean it up to make it read more smoothly, right? So if I'm translating, I'm faced with this sentence fragment, I'm more likely to fill it in as opposed to see a full sentence and drop half of it into something that makes no sense. So, but on the other hand, you'd think there'd be something there, especially here. It's just so it's glaring.
What did you say about the whole situation? What did the guy say about it?
Competition. Let's check. Let's check. Let's check Rashi. That's funny here. Different article translation from the Saperstein. Different article translation, because you had God's speech. God's speech here is, and Hashem said to Cain, "Why are you annoyed?" Annoyed isn't a great word. "And why is your countenance fallen? It is not true that if you do good, you will be forgiven." That's really a reach. "But if you do not do good, at the entrance, sin crouches. Its longing is toward you, yet you will rule over it." You can conquer it there. So two different article translations, which is the Cain spoke with his brother Abel, period. And it happened when they were in the field that Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. And then, by the way, yet you will rule over it here. Rashi's comment is im tirtza titkaber alav. If you want to, you will overcome it, which is that you can rule over it. Rashi is really clear that timshal means if you want to, which again is the whole, is there free will or not? This is the Cain spoke with his brother Abel. Rashi's comment is he entered with him into words of quarrel and contention. Nichnas imo riv umatza, to find a pretext against him to kill him. So Rashi thinks that the conversation is ginning up a fight, that this is like the proverbial guy in the bar who like is saying provocative things to for an excuse to fight. So that's his comment on it. Yes. This is the first. Well, it's the second people. These are the first people born. The first people born. And one kills the other. Well, I think that's actually the power. Part of the power of it is that it's not all that huge a reason. You know what? Before, comparatively less, like at like 9 last night, like Rabbi Sisi's are in the hallways are like really sort of like when you say like earlier, like I see things on TV that make me wonder about this country. Sort of like what's the reason? What prompts people to not see the humanity in somebody else that they'll beat somebody who's no harm to them to death, right? Like sort of like sort of like that's sort of the shocking thing about some of these things. Like I get firing a gun at somebody who you don't know whether or not they're threatening you and all that other sort of thing. But like sometimes maybe it's in us, and it's again the paradigm thing. Maybe it's in us that it doesn't take that much for us to be so emotionally wrought up. There we can see it. 1, 2.
Because they don't take it from the perspective of their parents and the impact to one of them dying.
Wait a minute. I'm not sure I'm following.
Well,
Wait a minute. That what will the parents think? Meaning that, are you saying that Cain's acting?
it's like a punishment to their parents.
Oh, that this is just sort of like continue. Oh, that read it. I get what you're saying. Like read it connected to the earlier, more strongly connected to the earlier story. That the pain in childbirth that we didn't get in that first line is coming out here. That the pain of their You know what? I've never thought of that. That's a good insight, Lynn. That this is part.
To a parent, it's unnatural to bury a child.
Well, and I would say Kal vachomer. Not only is it unnatural to bury a child, it's unnatural to bury a child who was killed by your other child. Yeah. So
Rabbi?
Nobody's died yet.
no, right. The first death is murder. Nobody dies a natural death. And what's more is there's no, like, God says you'll return to the earth, but like this is suddenly an expedited version of it.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Assuming there are no extra words in the Torah, when Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, we know who Abel is.
Right.
They added his brother to show it's his own flesh.
Right.
This is the worst possible thing you could do. This wasn't some stranger. So I think they added the words his brother to show how intimately related they were.
Right, because this isn't like in school where you're like, Michael G will sit here and Michael H will sit there, and Cynthia F will sit over here and Cynthia S will sit over here. Like there's not any other Abels, like Abel Hevel Achicha. And God's response, by the way, in the very next line is going to be the same. Ve'omer Adonai al Kain Hevel Achicha. Where is Abel, your brother? Like, again, as if there's any other, like, where's this, right? It says they're both Ben Adam, right? Like we know their last name. So yeah, so it could be that I mean, presumably, maybe Adam and Eve are like distracted parents. They're like, they're still feeling sorry for themselves. Oh, I can't believe you blew it. Or maybe, as you said, like you still passing the back. I can't believe you did that. I knew I should never listen to you. Right. So one, if I were to teach this, and I might like do it with Hebrew high students soon, but I think the key thing is God's speech is its urge is toward you, and yet you can conquer it. Like that's half of life, right? Is knowing that you're capable of conquering and just that poetic image that doing the wrong thing sometimes, like the urge is there, just like Eve desires the fruit from the tree. So why does he do it? I think our emotion, we get carried away by our feelings and we forget the consequences of our actions. And it's parallel to the first story, right? We can justify anything to ourselves. I think he's just so either enraged or saddened or insulted or what's the word that I'm looking for? Like where you feel like condescended to, like, which is again like what our situation.
Resents the younger brother.
Older brother resents the upstart, and I think this happens in societies, including our own, where people feel condescended to, and just enrages them to feel condescended to by people they think aren't worthy. And God cranked him up. I agree. God's sort of like this, right? This sort of like, you can do it, kid. Like, so yeah, you can read it that way. And also sort of like without, like God takes what? Does God not know that this sacrifice taking and not taking will have consequence? So yeah, so how would I teach it? I think it is both. You have to control your urges. And these first stories are about control your urges for a child that usually is jealousy and anger. And for adolescents, add in booze, drugs, and sex. And for like adults, then it's all of the above, right? Like so yeah. I think that's the point, yeah. Right.
I can't think of it.
You're right, right, yeah, so, right, yeah, so, right, so if you, if you feel, right, if you feel that you're, yeah, you have to, you have to find a way to like, to control your feelings, which is weird. It, especially because you would expect it maybe more out of Abel, the shepherd, maybe not. So Abel the shepherd is more passive. It's like it's more passive lifestyle, more chill lifestyle. But it could be that Cain, because of his focus on having to defend the land, and you need technology to break up the ground and things like this, that might be, yeah. Like what is it? Like what is there something, because we're given two key facts about them, that one's a shepherd, the other's a farmer. Like why these, anyway, so we'll pause there. I actually thought we'd get through the whole thing, but we got through much of it. Like it's a of the chapter. Yeah, powerful stuff, I think. All right, we will pause.